Good evening, dear TV viewers. We continue following the crucial developments. Today, we will talk to the EU ambassador in Armenia, Vasilis Maragos. Good evening, Mr. Maragos. We heard Borrell's statement in the European Parliament, where there are very interesting assessments. He says that Armenia-European Union relations are in historical phase. What is the historicity about, given that for more than 20 years we have relations?
It is really a pleasure, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today and to discuss about EU-Armenia relations. It is a particular pleasure that this interview is taking place in the public TV, which is addressing all Armenians, and it is a great opportunity for me. Since I arrived in September, I have been working tirelessly together with the authorities, but also other stakeholders in order to advance EU-Armenia relations. The statement about the historical phase, I think, comes from the very strong will of both sides. And here we are talking about the EU institutions, the EU member states, all the people on the EU side, but also all the people on the Armenian side, the government in the first place, but also all the other stakeholder businesses, civil society. We are working together in order to further develop a partnership which is already very strong. But let me recall that back in October, when there were meetings between the Prime Minister Pashinyan, and the leadership of the European Union in Granada, there was a process that we have started together in order to strengthen the relationship. And this is what we are doing. The European Council asked the EU institutions back in October to develop options for further deepening and strengthening the relationship in all their dimensions. And this is what we are doing. 2 weeks ago in Brussels at the Partnership Council, we have launched a joint process to develop a new partnership agenda. As you said, we have already a very strong relationship, but I think there are many areas where we can do better in order to respond in the first place to the aspirations of the Armenian people for a better life, for more prosperity, but also for more people-to-people contacts. And we are working in all these areas already. One new area in which we are already working, and we hope to have very concrete results soon, is the area of security. This is an area where we didn't have so much cooperation in the past, but now we have the EU mission, the EU monitoring mission in Armenia, which is going to be strengthened further in order to do more monitoring, more patrols. But also we are going to have Armenia participating in the European Peace Facility. And this is also another dimension which we are now exploring together with our Armenian partners, in particular the Ministry of Defense.
Look, I reread Mr. Borrell's speech from yesterday, and there are several questions. In general, by emphasizing the philosophy of relationships between us and the European Union, general directions, the vector, he says, the upcoming road sometimes could be difficult. The previous directions of Armenia that led to political, economic and security dependence. But the clear political will of both of the parties will enable us to go ahead, etc. It is not a secret, Mr. Maragos. Those previous decisions that led to political, economic and security dependence, those are dependence from Russia. Our Prime Minister has underlined in many times that for 30 years we have put our security and whole system in one place. And we gave an answer for that, namely, whether this is not the concern, that is the whole project and the approaches of the European Union is to reduce the dependence from Russia and leave them possibly outside of the region, as they voice it. Because if the European Union declares that the road is difficult and our road is that we should overcome our dependence from Russia, economic, security and political, they are correct in saying that the European Union wants, with the hands of Armenia, to mitigate, weaken and neutralize the regional dependence. Your comment?
My comment is very simple. We have heard the request and the desire of the Armenian authorities to diversify and to create new opportunities, more opportunities when it comes to the area of the security, but also when it comes to the area of the diversification of the economy. We have already the Comprehensive and Enhanced Partnership Agreement, the CEPA agreement, which is foreseeing very concrete areas of cooperation when it comes to the use of European standards, environmental standards, standards in the area of the quality infrastructure, so that we can help strengthen the quality infrastructure of the Armenian economy. And this is something which I think it is a win-win situation, and it is going to benefit all the partners. I don't think that we have to see things in a black and white situation. We are in the process of supporting, on the basis of a very clear dialogue that we have with the authorities, supporting this effort for diversification. And we believe that it is going to strengthen Armenia's independence, Armenia's sovereignty, but also the capacity of the institutions to deal with the various challenges that Armenia is facing in this region.
You emphasized the first point, to reinforce Armenia's resilience, diversify the economy in trade, energy, communication, aviation, security sectors. Look, Mr. Maragos, the gas, the nuclear power plant, the railway, even the imported fuel, petrol, all that is under direct Russian influence. The lion's share of our export goes to Russia. An economy breathes and develops thanks to it. And also, the road depends on Russia. How do you see its diversification?
At the end of the day, it will depend very much on the Armenian economic actors. It will depend very much on the decisions of the Armenian authorities on how they see the future of their trade relations. There are a lot of strong relationships. There are, as you said, some dependencies. I think it depends very much on how this vision is going to be developed in the next period. We are a partner, as I mentioned. We are helping to develop the trade between the European Union and Armenia. Let me just recall that between 2021 and 2023, we have seen more than doubling of the trade between the European Union and Armenia. This means both exports but also imports. And this is for the benefit of the people of Armenia. So I really believe that the trade relations, the new opportunities and more opportunities for trade and businesses, based also on common standards, on a common commitment on the rule of law and on quality standards which represent the requirements of a modern world trade, can be for the benefit of everybody. This is where we are working. But of course, all these processes have to do with changes in the structure of the economy, have to do with changes in the quality of the various products. And this is why Mr. Borrell has mentioned that there may be difficulties to implement all these processes. But we are committed. We are committed together with our partners, not only in the government, but also in the businesses. Let me mention here that we also support financially the private sector, we support investments, and I want to recall as well the Economic and Investment Plan of the European Union, which was launched back in 2021. And this has mobilized more than 550 million euro investments in the Armenian economy. Some of these investments is going to the green transition. This is something where we are all committed to work together to make sure that we address the climate change, but also we make our economies much more resilient in the future. We are on the same boat with Armenia in this respect, but most of it has gone actually to the private sector. And we are working very closely with the Armenian banks in order to provide more liquidity and more opportunities to the private sector, mostly small and medium-sized enterprises, but not only. We have also a little bit bigger enterprises who receive funding in this respect, in particular in the food sector, in order precisely to help develop the trade in a context of further economic development of Armenia. And we see the results. The results are already there. And we have provided the creation of hundreds of new jobs in these enterprises through this funding.
Շատ լավ։ Երկրորդ
Very well. The second component is the security that Mr. Borrell mentions. He says that this is an increasingly important element. You mentioned that you are discussing the possible means of establishing the European peace. Expand the dialogue about the security. Look, Mr. Maragos, your opponents say that there are two components that do not speak in favor of the European Union. First, the European Union does not have the relevant capacities in order to help us in security issue, given the real threat that we are facing, military invasion by Azerbaijan. And the second, your opponents say that, unlike Russia, you do not have vital interests in this region. Namely, it is important for you, but for Russia it is one thing, vital interest. Another thing is, let's see what will happen. They say that given these two components, it is not correct to connect the day of tomorrow in regard of security with the European Union, deepen the relationships because it provokes, irritates, and generates countermeasures from Russia. Your comment.
We have a partnership with Armenia. We have a partnership with the Armenian people, but also we have cooperation in the whole region. We are very much committed to peace and normalization in this region. We are committed to strengthen the partnership with all the peoples in this region on the basis of an understanding that there should not be use of force, there should be dialogue. And in this context, also we are ready to use these tools that the European Union has developed the last few years, in particular the European Peace Facility. The European Peace Facility is aiming to strengthen defense capabilities in order to make sure that the use of force is not a solution to any kind of differences, any kind of opinions in respect to the various conflicts which may emerge or which exist already. On top of that, we are very much committed into developing connectivity and infrastructure. And in this respect, we have been in dialogue with the government about the initiative of the Prime Minister, which was presented, by the way, in the region, in Georgia, in a very important international event back in October, the Crossroads of Peace. And this is something on which we are discussing in order to see what would be the peace dividend. How can we develop projects, how we can develop solutions which can benefit everybody in this region on the basis of an understanding that the territorial integrity, the sovereignty of each partner is going to be respected. The European Union is basing its activities not only in this region but in the whole world on the rule of law, and in particular on the international law. And I think that we are on the same side, in particular with the Armenian people in this respect. And I hope and I believe that all the partners will abide by these very important principles which govern the international life.
I'm sure you know better than me that the international law is not far in its best shape. And our Russian partners, when they come to Armenia, they directly tell us, if you continue the deepening of your relationships with the European Union, and they consider it as a project of the European Union and the collective West, then Azerbaijan will attack you, and in this case, only Russia has toolkit to be that good or bad. So they tell us, think about who you are dealing with. Please comment. And honestly, that generates serious questions and concerns in Armenia.
For us, I think the situation in the region is very simple. We believe in the territorial integrity, in the sovereignty of Armenia. We support this, not only the European institutions, but also all our member states. And this is the reason why we developed this cooperation that we have with the Armenian government, with the Armenian people. In this context, we hear the requests, we hear the expectations, we hear the aspirations, and we are working together in order to create better conditions on the ground. This is also the essence of our presence through the European Union mission in Armenia. We monitor the border, we patrol the border, and we don't believe in the use of force. We believe that whatever differences may exist, there are diplomatic means, there is the international law. You said very well that it is not in its best shape, but we need to uphold it. We need to support it so that the international law, the rule of law, the principles which govern the international life, the principles of the United Nations are upheld by everybody. So this is where we are working, and I hope that we will achieve results by diplomatic means, by dialogue, and by making sure that the aspirations of the Armenian people and the expectations of the Armenian government can be also supported by all the tools that the European Union has developed in this region.
What you say is very good and welcome. But we remember, as your opponents say, not much time passed when US high-ranking officials and many European Union officials and members of the European Parliament were saying that they believe that there would be no violent solution of Nagorno-Karabakh issue. It will not be depopulated by Armenians, but we have what we have. And at that time you also believed.
That's true. We believe and we continue to believe, and we will continue making the point about peaceful arrangements and peaceful resolution to all the issues which have to do with peace and normalization in this region. So from that perspective, I think our message is very clear, and we continue to support all the efforts. As you know, President Michel, we have a special representative who is daily working with all the partners in this region in order to make sure that the use of force is not the solution to any of the issues.
The third is about investments. What investments are we talking about that we can get? They were also speaking about aid to our countrymen from Artsakh. I looked at Georgia's numbers during the war when there were refugees. There were 130,000 refugees almost. Then some of them returned and 23,000 refugees remained in Georgia. The European Union gave $500 million of assistance for 23,000 refugees. And if I am not mistaken, $1 billion given by the United States. What kind of assistance package can we expect from the European Union? Yesterday, I was hosting the Deputy Prime Minister, and he was speaking about numbers which are heavy for our economy. Please.
From the very beginning, we have mobilized humanitarian assistance. We are also supporting the integration of the refugees from Nagorno-Karabakh. It was a very traumatic experience, and we are helping with all the elements which could be helping them in these very difficult and dire circumstances. The European Union, together with its member states, we have mobilized more than 60 million euro so far, and we are now discussing on the basis of the announcements which were made by the government yesterday. We are now discussing with the Deputy Prime Minister, with other partners within the government, but also with the civil society on how we can scale up this investment. So we will continue supporting the government for its through budget support programs that we are already delivering. And we are going to work together with international financial institutions and local banks to provide support to the housing effort. In parallel, we are going to adjust our programs for the support to small and medium-sized enterprises in order to be able to help the employment of these people. Because among the refugees, we have vulnerable people who we are ready to support, young people, elderly, children, orphans. We should not forget about them. But also we have people who have talents, who have experiences, and these people can support both the private sector economy, the competitiveness of the Armenian economy, but also they can support all the processes and the business opportunities which may exist in the context of the development of these new programs. So we have to find a way to give them opportunities for employment, and this is something that we will continue doing also through the support programs to the private sector. So I'm expecting that this initial effort that we have made, I repeat, a little bit more than 60 million euro, is going now to be further expanded in order to be able to respond to their expectations.
Thank you. You probably know that there was a discussion in our society about the recent developments that took place in Nerkin Hand. There were Russian bodyguards, and you probably know that 4 Armenian servicemen died. And they were saying that the European Union observers could not perform monitoring there. On our border, there are sections where there are Russian border guards, but the observers are performing monitoring. What is the Nerkin Hand specificity that you cannot perform monitoring there?
We are patrolling the whole border on the side of Armenia, the whole border with Azerbaijan. And since the beginning of this European mission, we have done more than 1,700 patrols. Our monitors are all the time patrolling the borders, monitoring, discussing with partners on the ground. And I think that this is already noticed by the Armenian people, and this is strengthening also their sense of security. We have also seen a very clear diminishing of the incidents, security incidents that we have had in the past. As it was mentioned last week when we had the first anniversary of the European Union mission, there were some obstacles and some challenges in relation to access to certain parts of the border on which we have been working with the Armenian partners. And this is something where I hope that we can find some solution soon.
They are also discussing the visa liberalization issue. You know that our authorities are raising the issue for a long time, but in practice there is no progress. Will we see the end of that process in our lifetime or not, Mr. Ambassador?
Thank you for this question. I know that this is extremely important for the people of Armenia. It is extremely important for our trade and commercial relations, but it is extremely important for people-to-people contacts. So from that perspective, from the very beginning of the development of this new agenda, we have said very clearly that we want to explore all the possibilities and all the options. First of all, to launch a dialogue on what needs to be done so that Armenia is receiving visa liberalization. Visa liberalization means the opportunity to Armenian citizens, Armenian people who will have biometric passports, to travel to the European Union for short trips up to 6 months in the course of every year, every calendar year. So visa liberalization does not mean labor visa, which is still at the level of the competencies of the member states. So let's be very clear about that. But on the other side, it is extremely important for people-to-people contacts. It is extremely important for having closer relations, and this is something on which we are working. I hope that in the next period, we will be able, with the support of all our member states, to open the dialogue, work on any pending issue, pending concern that the member states may have, and then have a decision which will allow to the Armenian people to have free access to the European Union through this visa liberalization program, which will strengthen our relations. I personally believe and hope that this will happen relatively soon with the support of both sides and all the technical work which needs to happen in this respect.
Has the process been launched? Is it a process, isn't it?
We are in constant dialogue with the authorities. In the context of the preparation of this new partnership agenda, we are already discussing about the various areas where reforms need to take place. We have also advised the authorities of Armenia, in particular the Ministry of Interior, the Migration Service, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to discuss with the member states when it comes to the use of the existing visa facilitation agreement, so that we can address any concerns, they can address any concerns that the European Union member states may have raised in this respect, so that we can launch officially the dialogue on visa liberalization. But of course, we are already preparing that, as already mentioned in the speech of Mr. Borrell that you talked about earlier. We are exploring actively the possibilities and the options so that we can launch this dialogue very, very soon.
Mr. Maragos, as this is not a short process and we go in traditional way, going to the embassy, and you know the kind of obstacles there. There is public discontent there. Before we start and finish that process, maybe we can try to find effective solutions here for our citizens not to try and wait for years and be desperate in that regard.
It's a very important point. I'm particularly sensitive and aware of the difficulties sometimes to have access to visas. We're working actively now with the member states ambassadors here in Armenia. As you know, we have limited number of embassies, which means also a limited number of possibilities to have appointments. But we are going to work together in order to make sure that all those people who have to travel receive their visas on time, and they are traveling on time and they don't miss the appointment. Sometimes I hear, for instance, that there are experts either in the private sector or in the public sector who are missing important opportunities for training, and this is unacceptable. We have to make sure that these opportunities are not missed, and we have to work together with the member states' embassies here in Armenia. We have to work together to make sure that we accelerate the process.
There is a great debate in our political field associated with the European Union. A part of our opposition notes all the good things you mentioned related to Armenia-European Union relations, economy, security, visa liberalization, etc. The European Union is doing at the cost of breaking off relations with CSTO and Russia. On the agenda, there is the issue of freezing the membership in CSTO. And they say, and also Russia says, that you try to push off Russia from the region with the hands of Armenia. And they say that you do that not for Armenia, but for you, for your own interests, so that Armenia gets into this game and pushes Russia out of this region. CSTO, border guards, soldiers, then issue will get to the military base. Is there such a logic, or there are parallel processes? You know that Maria Zakharova every day says that the EU observers destabilize the region. You only introduce tension, etc. Please.
I want to reassure the Armenian people that what we are doing here is in line with the spirit and the letter of our cooperation. It is in line with the Comprehensive and Enhanced Partnership Agreement. As you know, it was signed back in 2017, and it is in line also with what we hear from the government, what we hear from the civil society, what we hear from the people on the ground when it comes to what are the expectations from the European Union. The European Union is a unique project which has brought peace among its members after the Second World War, and it is working for the prosperity and for a better understanding between peoples. In this context, our only guiding principle is the aspiration of the Armenian people, is how we can strengthen the sense of the security and of faith in the future of the Armenian people. I want to mention also another element. The Armenian people is an old historical nation, a very important people in world culture and certainly in European culture. So we have an obligation as Europeans to work together in order to value your culture, in order to value the preservation of your heritage. And in this context, we are ready to discuss and to work on all the issues which affect the sense of the European identity of the Armenian people. Armenia is a member of the Council of Europe. This is actually the organization which binds us into these common values that we have together, the values of democracy, of checks and balances within the institutions, of rule of law. And this is, I think, the basis also of our partnership. So I'm not very sympathetic to these ideas that we have to take sides, that we have to select who will be our partners. I think it is extremely important that the choice of the sovereign choice of the Armenian people is respected by all the partners. And we are such a partner for the European, on the side of the European Union for the Armenian people.
You know that the Prime Minister has stated that we are ready to deepen our relations as much as the European Union is ready to deepen those relationships. From the other hand, we know the example of Georgia, that is already a candidate. Are there more far-going projects in the agenda or not, for more integration?
Within the European space, I have already mentioned the Council of Europe. We also have other schemes of cooperation. Within the European space, the European Union is one of the major actors. So from that perspective, we have various elements and frames of cooperation. Armenia participates also in the Eastern Partnership. Part of these countries like Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia have been given the European perspective on the basis of the will and the interest of the governments and the peoples from these countries. So again, this is not a competition. It is about giving space to our common aspirations to work together and to find ways to cooperate as efficiently as possible. What the Prime Minister has said at the European Parliament is very much welcome. I think it is a very clear indication that Armenia is ready to strengthen our cooperation, and we have welcomed that. And actually, this is the basis of the process which has led us to launch this work on the new partnership agenda. But at the end of the day, the end of the journey will depend on both sides. I think both sides, we have to do our homework in the first place to make sure that we are ready for any further steps in our cooperation and try to identify together what will be the shape of this new agenda. And this is what we are precisely doing these days and these weeks. By the way, this week we have had a mission from Brussels discussing many of the subjects that we have been talking about today. And this is part of the joint technical and political dialogue that we are having together with the authorities in order to define this new agenda. I'm very committed to work together with not only the authorities but also other stakeholders in this area as a representative of the European Union in Armenia. But I also am convinced that we are going to define this new partnership agenda together for the benefit of both sides.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you for the interview.
Շնորհակալություն.
Dear viewers, our guest was the Ambassador of the European Union to Armenia, Vasilis Maragos. We will meet. Goodbye.